Hi guys, this is Max here, back again with hopefully another great political video. And now we're finally getting to see some details on how exactly the 2022 midterm elections are going to look like. Because states are holding primaries. And perhaps the most interesting one was in the state of Ohio, because even though the state has been trending to the right, it is sort of still a swing state, and who wins in those races will end up being very interesting. Now, I'd get straight to it, I suggest. For the Republicans, J.D. Vance pulled off a very convincing victory. He won by about 10% against somebody who was heavily favored over most of the election cycle. Josh Mandel was leading the polls for a long time, but then Donald Trump endorsed J.D. Vance. But who is the man? Well, J.D. Vance, I can pull him up here right now, is the author of Hillbilly Eligibility, and overall tried to make the American rural working class more easy to understand for people who lived in the cities and what their needs and concerns are. And he was very successful at that. He was influential in the Republican Party and the Make America Great Again movement. Even though he did not initially support Donald Trump, he is closely affiliated with that part of the Republican Party that's advocating for high tariffs, heavy social and moral values on issues such as abortion and religion. And he also is a economic moderate. At least he's trying to have more centrist views when it comes to the economy, and he's extremely tough on border security. And that is the type of person who's going to run against the Democratic nominee. He's a former Marine as well. And the Democrats are going to run Tim Ryan, who is a congressman from a Trump district in Ohio. That's this dude here. Now, I'm not saying Tim Ryan is a bad candidate. He won in a Republican district that is pretty Republican, and he is not necessarily too much of a moderate Democrat. He does have pretty good labor policies, but he's no Sherrod Brown either. So even though I believe he will do well, or at least better than all these other Democrats, I still think he will ultimately lose against J.D. Vance, especially since Ohio is a very pro-Trump state. And if we look at the size of lead for the Republican primary, we can see the areas where J.D. Vance did the best was obviously the Cincinnati area where he's from, and southern and rural Ohio. He really got a tremendous amount of votes. I mean, all these rural areas really heavily came out for Vance, especially the ones that have a heavy manufacturing industry. The ones that are more agricultural based in the western part of the state did vote for this other candidate, Josh Mandel, and the cities that have more liberal Republicans voted for Matt Dolan. And however, I think this primary makes it pretty clear J.D. Vance is going to be the guy who wins this race. Also, probably because he got over 1 million votes in the primary. Not he, but all the Republicans together, while the Democrats got just 500,000 votes. Now, the Republican primary was more competitive, but there's a pretty big difference in terms of vote numbers. And I think, according to that, it'd be safe to assume that Republicans will win this race. Now, for the governorship, the incumbent Mike DeWine won re-election. He almost got 50%, but he did have two very strong challengers from the right, and if you'd combine their vote share, they would defeat DeWine. However, they did not end up striking a deal or doing anything else, so Mike DeWine was able to pull off a victory. His support was pretty consistent throughout the state, but especially these margins in the city area where the more traditional Republicans live that are not very Trumpian helped him over the corner. And for the Democratic primary, Nina Wally won the governorship. I, I never heard about that woman before, and I really do a lot of politics stuff, and I do not seriously think she'll have a chance against DeWine. Mike DeWine is not the most popular governor, but he has been involved in Ohio politics almost forever. I think he was a senator in there back in the 90s, and the amount of name recognition that he has will carry him towards an easy victory. And then there were a few more House primaries. There's a guy called Majewski who is a very far right Republican and very beloved by the Trump base, and he won the primary there. And there were a couple of races for like for congressional districts in which the incumbents won. Like, and like these are the races I believe for state legislature probably, or yeah, those are for state legislature, and those here are for the House of Representatives. And when we, I'm sorry, my voice has been pretty bad today. Now, if you look at a few other states such as Texas, we can also look at their primary results. Texas has been a very reliably Republican state, and it drifted slightly to the left in more recent years. There's no Senate race in Texas going on, but there is a pretty competitive gubernatorial election, one which was won by Beto O'Rourke. I mean, not the election, but he won the Democratic primary, and his opponents only won in areas where they're from. Like, he basically ran the board, but that doesn't have to mean anything. Greg Abbott won every single county in Texas, and he actually had a pretty competitive challenger in Alan West, who was the former chair of the Republican Party in that state. Very anti-vaccine, very far right, but Greg Abbott ended up winning. Oh, and I should say he was not anti-vax; he was anti-mandate. I'm sorry, I want to be completely accurate. And if we look at the votes again, there were 1 million votes in the Democratic primary and almost 2 million votes in the Republican primary. Now, primary votes are not the end all be all when it comes to predicting elections. But in this case, the Democratic election was far less competitive than the Republican one. And yet, the Republican primary almost had twice the amount of turnout, even though there are technically more registered Democrats in Texas than there are Republicans, I believe. Because Democrats seem to have a registration advantage. Nonetheless, Republicans are ahead by a massive amount. And it really looks like Texas is going to go to Abbott again. I have relatives in Texas who have their own opinions about him, but I would like to say that Greg Abbott, even though he's not the best governor nationwide, is probably going to beat Beto O'Rourke, especially since he sometimes comes off a little bit childish. Especially that one time in the debate where he started talking in very horrible Spanish. And also, we need to not forget about the fact Beto O'Rourke is pretty anti-gun, and Texas, let's be real here, they love their guns. He's not going to win. Ken Paxton is now in a runoff with George P. Bush, who is actually a member of the Bush family. I believe he's W. Bush Jr.'s nephew. And that guy who used to be the agriculture secretary or something is now trying to become attorney general. Ken Paxton got a lot of attention for like trying to sue the federal government over the U.S. borders crisis. Oops, I'm sorry. And yeah, I think he's probably going to win though. I mean, the Bushes are not popular in Texas, not with most people. And Rochelle Garza and Joe Jaronsky have advanced to a runoff. Yeah, these races are not really that important, so I'll go out again. In Indiana, there's one interesting race I'd like to look at because it includes a familiar name, Greg Pence, who is Mike Pence's brother. Easily won an election with the Donald Trump endorsement, and yeah, he's gonna win. Almost certainly. I mean, it's a pretty Republican district. So that's something interesting. Other than that, there are not many interesting races in Indiana. I believe there is a. Is the Indiana Republican retiring? The incumbent senator? I don't think so, to be honest. No. Indiana does not have a retiring Republican incumbent. So he's probably going to end up winning anyway, so we don't have to look into that all that much. For those other states, we don't have results yet, but as of right now, that would be it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's nice to see who's winning, who's getting into the next round, and who's eliminated. Some of these people's political careers ended tonight. However, there might be a few losers that could get back up on their feet again. There's a race in Ohio for, I believe it was a congressional primary for the Democrats. Nina Turner, who already run in a special election in that district a few months ago, is now trying to go for another turn, this time for a full congressional term, but she failed pretty miserably. She's the only one who has the name recognition and the support from the progressive base to launch something as bold as potentially even a presidential campaign, because she's the only left-wing activist slash politician who has not kneeled down to Joe Biden like the members of the squad in Congress did. Like, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would always vote for the Democrats in order to support her own career ambitions. Nina Turner would actually choose to not vote for the Democratic candidate if it wasn't a progressive candidate. She compared voting for Biden to eating shit. And therefore, I believe it'd be safe to say that Nina Turner will have a future, at least in the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. Now, this should be it for now. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you liked seeing the primary results. If you lived in one of those states, please let me know in the comment section down below how you think about it. And just as always, have a good night, and see you guys later. Bye-bye.